The Escher Imperium's long-range explorer vessel, Aegis, hung in the darkness above a nameless moon, its scanner array picking up the faintest traces of structured communications. Captain Silas Rowe stood before the tactical display, his scaled fingers tracing the signal pattern that had drawn his crew to this unremarkable system in Sector Q-17. "Lieutenant Venn, your assessment?" he asked, turning to his chief reconnaissance officer. Lieutenant Mara Venn stepped forward, her four-pupiled eyes narrowing as she studied the readouts. She was the youngest officer ever to achieve her rank in the Escher Scout Corps, a distinction earned through 15 successful first-contact scenarios and 37 hostile territory infiltrations. "The signal structure is unmistakably human, Captain," she replied, mandibles clicking softly in concentration. "But there's no record of authorized settlement in this sector. According to Imperial archives, the nearest human outpost should be 17 light-years from here." Captain Rowe's crest flattened in thought. Sector Q-17 had long been a problem for the Escher Imperium, technically claimed, but practically ungovernable due to its distance from established hyperspace lanes. The region had become a political void, nominally under Imperial jurisdiction but, in reality, ignored by all major powers. It was precisely this ambiguity that had prompted the Aegis mission: chart the unclaimed systems, assess security risks, and update the Imperial database. "Could it be pirates, smugglers?" asked Commander Threll, the ship's security chief. Venn shook her head. "Negative. The communications are too disciplined, too structured. Pirates maintain chaotic comm protocols to avoid pattern recognition. These signals show military precision, short bursts at regular intervals, heavily encrypted but following human military formatting." Rowe clicked a command into the display, enlarging the moon's topographical scan. "Sensors are picking up minimal power signatures. Whatever's down there is using passive systems or has excellent shielding." He turned to face his officers. "This warrants closer inspection. Lieutenant Venn, prepare a scout team for surface reconnaissance. Find out what humans are doing in disputed space without triggering an interspecies incident." Venn saluted, her inner eyelids blinking in acknowledgement. "We'll deploy within the hour, Captain." As she left the bridge, Venn couldn't shake a sense of unease. Humans were notoriously territorial, but their military operations typically came with diplomatic notifications, especially in contested regions. Something about this felt wrong. A hidden operation in a sector the humans shouldn't even care about. In the preparation bay, Venn briefed her team. Operatives Kieran, Yelena, and Drax, all veterans of frontier reconnaissance missions. They equipped themselves with adaptive camouflage suits, non-lethal immobilizers, and standard infiltration gear. "Our objective is observation only," Venn emphasized as they checked their equipment. "We determine the nature and purpose of the human installation, then withdraw without detection. The Aegis will maintain high orbit to avoid alerting them to our presence." Operative Kieran, a rangy Ashar with unusually dark scales, looked up from calibrating his scanner. "Lieutenant, what's the contingency if we're spotted?" "Immediate withdrawal," Venn replied without hesitation. "This mission is intelligence gathering, not confrontation. We're deep in disputed space, and the diplomatic implications of an armed encounter with humans would be problematic." The team nodded in understanding. The Escher-human accords that had ended the last border war remained fragile, and neither species was eager for renewed hostilities. As their stealth shuttle detached from the Aegis, Venn reviewed what they knew about the moon below. Class M atmosphere, 0.8 standard gravity, dense forest coverage over most of the northern hemisphere. Scans had detected a small clearing approximately 20 kilometers from the source of the communications, offering them a secure landing zone. "Orbital scans complete," announced Yelena from the pilot seat. "I'm picking up what appears to be a camouflaged compound at the transmission source. Structures hidden under canopy. but thermal imaging shows organized heat signatures consistent with buildings and possibly a training ground. Ven leaned forward to examine the display. The compound was well concealed, visible only through the most sophisticated scanning technology. If the Aegis hadn't been specifically hunting for anomalies, they would have missed it entirely. "Interesting," she murmured. "That level of concealment suggests military rather than civilian purpose." The shuttle descended silently through the moon's atmosphere, its stealth systems masking their approach from any sensors below. They landed without incident in the small clearing, the dense foliage closing around them like a shroud. "Atmospheric conditions nominal," reported Drax, checking the external sensors. "No detectable toxins or pathogens. Standard oxygen-nitrogen mix. Slightly higher oxygen content than HFY standard, but within tolerance." Ven activated her adaptive camouflage, her form shimmering briefly before blending with the surrounding vegetation. "Move out. Standard reconnaissance formation. Calm silence except for emergency transmissions." The forest was unnervingly Earth-like, another reminder of the strange biological parallel that had made humans and HFY competitors for the same class of planets. The team moved with practiced efficiency through the undergrowth, their movements silent, despite the carpet of leaves and twigs beneath their feet. After 3 hours of careful advancement, they reached the perimeter of the compound. Ven signaled a halt, and the team took cover behind a ridge overlooking the facility. What they saw defied explanation. The compound consisted of several low buildings, arranged around a central clearing. The structures were camouflaged with native vegetation, nearly invisible from above. In the clearing, a group of humans moved in formation, but they were not the adult soldiers Ven had expected. They were children, perhaps 20 of them, ranging in age from what appeared to be 8 to 14 Earth years. "What in the 7 moons?" whispered Kieran, breaking comm protocol in his shock. Ven gestured sharply for silence, but she shared his confusion. The children were dressed in matching uniforms, simple olive-drab coveralls with various colored sashes crossing their chests. They moved with discipline, following the commands of a slightly older youth who paced before them, issuing orders. Through her high-powered optics, Ven could see that the children carried what appeared to be training weapons, not the energy rifles standard to human military, but simplified facsimiles designed to mimic weight and handling. Some carried small packs. Others wore equipment harnesses laden with pouches and tools. "This makes no sense." Ven subvocalized through their secure comlink. "Human military doctrine prohibits the deployment of pre-adults in combat roles. Their own interstellar treaties forbid it." "Could be refugees," suggested Yelena. "A colony displaced by the border conflicts, training their young for self-defense." Drax shook his head minutely. "Negative. Look at the discipline, the organization. This isn't desperate civilians. This is military training, systematic and professional." Ven had to agree. The children were executing complex maneuvers, rotating through stations that appeared to teach everything from communications to field medicine to what looked disturbingly like small unit tactics. "Kieran, circle east. Get closer visual confirmation on their activities. Yelena, set up signal intercept. Let's see if we can decrypt their communications. Drax, maintain overwatch position. I'll move to the western flank for a secondary observation point." The team dispersed according to orders. Ven moved carefully through the dense foliage, maintaining cover as she worked her way to a new vantage point. From her new position, she could see another building, larger than the others and partially subterranean. A communications array emerged from its roof, carefully disguised as a native tree but unmistakable to trained eyes. Suddenly, her comm unit vibrated with an emergency signal from Kieran. Before she could respond, a sharp crackling sound echoed through the forest, followed by Kieran's voice, not through the comm, but audible in the distance. "Trap! It's a—" His voice cut off abruptly. Ven froze, every sense alert for danger. She switched to thermal vision, scanning the forest around her, but detected no movement. "Team status report," she whispered into her comm. "Overwatch position secure," came Drax's immediate response. "Signal intercept established," reported Yelena. "Beginning decryption protocols." No word from Kieran. Ven made a quick decision. "Maintain positions. I'm proceeding to Kieran's last location." Moving with even greater caution. Ven navigated toward the eastern flank where Kieran had been heading. As she approached, she spotted him, suspended 2 meters above the ground, in what appeared to be a simple net trap. His camouflage system was malfunctioning, flickering between concealment and visibility as he struggled against the restraints. Most concerning, however, was what surrounded him. 3 human children, no older than 12 Earth years, were positioned in the undergrowth below, primitive projectile weapons trained on the captured Ashar. They were utterly silent, communicating with each other through hand signals that Ven recognized as simplified versions of human military code. One child, a female with her hair pulled back in a tight configuration, spotted something in the forest and made a sharp whistling sound. Immediately, the other 2 changed positions, maintaining their triangulated coverage of Kieran while scanning the surroundings. Ven realized with a chill that they were looking for the rest of the team. They had anticipated that Kieran wouldn't be alone. These were not ordinary children. They had set up the trap deliberately, using Kieran's capture as bait to draw out the others. It was a tactic straight from advanced field manuals, one that Ven herself had employed in previous operations. She keyed her comm to the emergency channel. "All units, pull back to Rally Point Alpha. Kieran is compromised. Repeat, pull back immediately." As she began her careful retreat, a whistle sounded from somewhere to her right, different in pitch and pattern from the first. Almost instantly, she heard similar calls, echoing through the forest in all directions. They were being hunted. Ven increased her pace, no longer prioritizing stealth over speed. She needed to regroup with Drax and Yelena, formulate an extraction plan for Kieran, and reassess the entire mission. As she moved, she detected motion in her peripheral vision, small shapes darting between trees, moving with surprising stealth for being so young. One of the figures paused, raising something to its face. Ven dropped instinctively, just as a small projectile whizzed over her head, striking a tree behind her with a soft thwack. She glanced back to see a dart embedded in the trunk, non-lethal, but undoubtedly containing some form of immobilizing agent. "Lieutenant," Yelena's voice came through the comm, tense but controlled. "Decryption partial success. Intercepted communications include phrases, practice ambush, field rations, and mission debrief. They're using a simplified cipher of standard human military code." "Acknowledged," Ven responded, ducking beneath a low-hanging branch. "Status on extraction?" "I've triggered the emergency beacon. The shuttle is initiating automated return to our coordinates. ETA 40 minutes. 40 minutes. They needed to evade capture and extract Kieran within that window." Ven reached the rally point to find Drax already there, his massive frame pressed against the trunk of a fallen tree for cover. "They're everywhere," he reported grimly. "I count at least 15 distinct units moving through the forest in search patterns. They're driving us toward that ravine to the north. Classic containment maneuver." Ven processed this information quickly. "Where's Yelena?" "Still at her signal intercept position. She said she needed 2 more minutes to complete the data download." Before Ven could respond, a series of short, sharp whistles cut through the forest, different from the previous signals. Immediately, the movement patterns around them changed. The searching figures began to converge. "They've spotted us," Ven realized. "New plan. I'll create a diversion to the south. You circle back to extract Yelena. Then both of you head for Kieran's position. Use immobilizers if necessary, but minimum force only." Drax nodded, his inner eyelids blinking in acknowledgement. Ven activated her emergency beacon, a calculated risk that would draw attention, but also help the shuttle locate them more quickly. Then she broke cover, moving rapidly through the underbrush toward the southern edge of the forest. As expected, several of the small figures changed direction to pursue her. Ven led them on a twisting path away from her teammates, using every evasion technique in her considerable repertoire. These children were good, unnervingly so, but they lacked the experience that came with years of field operations. After putting sufficient distance between herself and the rally point, Ven doubled back through a stream to mask her trail. She had just regained solid ground when her comm unit crackled to life. "Lieutenant," Drax's voice was barely above a whisper. "Situation critical. Yelena is down. Some kind of primitive spring trap caught her leg. I've got her. But we're pinned down near the signal intercept point. Multiple hostiles converging." Ven swore under her breath, a rare break in her professional demeanor. "Hold position! I'm coming to you!" She changed direction, pushing her speed to the limit as she navigated back toward Yelena's last known position. The forest seemed to be working against her, every root and branch a potential obstacle. When she arrived at the signal intercept point, she found it abandoned, with signs of a struggle evident in the disturbed undergrowth. A quick scan revealed a trail leading deeper into the forest, not toward the compound, but away from it. Following the signs, she moved swiftly until she heard voices ahead. Crouching behind a massive tree trunk, Ven peered around to assess the situation. What she saw made her blood run cold. In a small clearing, Drax and Yelena were surrounded by a circle of human children. Yelena was on the ground, her leg bound in some kind of primitive but effective restraint. Drax stood protectively over her, his immobilizer drawn but not fired, clearly unwilling to use even non-lethal force against children. The young humans had formed a perfect perimeter, weapons trained on the Tuashar. They maintained disciplined silence, awaiting orders from a slightly taller figure who stepped into the clearing. This was clearly their leader, a human male approximately 14 Earth years old, wearing an olive-drab uniform with a red sash across his chest. Various badges adorned the sash, denoting some rank or achievement system Ven didn't recognize. He carried himself with the confidence of a seasoned commander, despite his obvious youth. "Identify yourselves and state your purpose," the boy said, his voice surprisingly steady and authoritative. Drax remained silent, following protocol for capture situations. The boy tilted his head, studying the aliens with obvious curiosity, but no fear. "You're Eshar scouts, obviously. Imperial reconnaissance, based on your equipment." He gestured to one of the younger children, who immediately produced what appeared to be a handheld scanner. "Your ship is in high orbit. Impressive stealth systems. But our deep space array detected the drive signature when you entered the system." Ven felt a chill run down her spine. Their mission had been compromised from the beginning. These children had known they were coming. The boy continued, pacing calmly before the captured scouts. "You have 2 more team members unaccounted for. One is in our custody to the east. The other," he smiled slightly, "is currently hiding behind the large conifer approximately 20 meters to my left." Ven froze. How had he known? "Your adaptive camouflage is impressive," the boy called out, now addressing her directly. "But it doesn't mask thermal signatures completely. Our scanners are calibrated specifically for Ishar body temperature." It was a bluff. It had to be. Ven remained motionless, trusting her training and equipment. The boy sighed, then made a quick hand gesture. Immediately, 3 of the children redirected their weapons toward Ven's position. Another signal, and a small projectile shot from one of their weapons, bursting against the tree beside her in a cloud of luminescent particles that settled on her camouflage suit, rendering it useless as the particles outlined her form. "Last chance," the boy called. "Surrender your weapons and step into the clearing, or we'll be forced to use less comfortable methods of persuasion." Ven weighed her options rapidly. Their shuttle would arrive in approximately 20 minutes. If she could stall, perhaps create an opening. She stepped into the clearing, her immobilizer held loosely at her side in a non-threatening posture. "I am Lieutenant Mara Ven of the Eshar Imperium explorer vessel Aegis. We are on a sanctioned reconnaissance mission in unclaimed space. The detention of Imperial personnel constitutes a violation of the Escher Human Accords." The boy smiled, a disconcertingly adult expression on his young face. "This sector is not unclaimed, Lieutenant. It falls within the boundaries established by the Terran Frontier Initiative. Your presence here without prior notification is the actual violation." He gestured around at his young troops. "We are simply conducting training exercises on sovereign territory." "Training exercises?" Ven couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "These are children. Human interstellar law prohibits military training of pre-adults." "A common misconception," the boy replied smoothly. "The prohibition is against deployment of minors in active combat roles. The Frontier Scout program is classified as educational, providing survival skills, discipline, and emergency preparedness for colonial youth." His smile widened slightly. "The fact that these skills have tactical applications is merely incidental." Before Ven could respond, her comm unit crackled with static. Then Captain Rowe's voice came through. "Lieutenant Ven, be advised. Multiple small craft have launched from the far side of the moon. Configurations unknown, but approach vectors suggest intercept course. Aegis is deploying countermeasures and dispatching extraction shuttle with security complement. Hold position." The boy's expression changed subtly. He'd clearly intercepted the transmission. He raised a small communicator to his mouth. "Delta to command. Visitors have called for backup. Initiate Protocol 7. Almost immediately. A series of alarms sounded from the direction of the compound. The children around them tensed, but maintained their positions. "It seems we're short on time," the boy, Delta, said. "So I'll be direct. You have two options, Lieutenant. Surrender your weapons and equipment and remain as our guests until diplomatic channels can establish proper protocols for your release. Or," he paused, "attempt to resist, forcing us to demonstrate that our training is more than just educational." Ven met his gaze steadily. "You're outnumbered and outgunned. Delta, an Imperial security team is inbound." Delta's smile never wavered. "Are we outnumbered, Lieutenant? Your scans only detected our surface facility. You have no idea how many personnel we have planetside." He gestured to the forest around them. "As for outgunned, perhaps. But we have the tactical advantage of familiar terrain and established defensive positions." As if to emphasize his point, the forest around them suddenly came alive with movement. Dozens more children emerging from concealment, all armed, all taking up strategic positions throughout the clearing and surrounding woods. Ven felt a grudging respect begin to form. These humans had orchestrated a perfect ambush, using the captured Ashar scouts as bait to draw the rest of the team into a carefully prepared kill zone. Had this been actual combat rather than a training exercise, her entire team would be dead. Her comm unit crackled again. "Lieutenant, extraction shuttle is 5 minutes out. Be advised, we're detecting energy signatures consistent with defensive emplacements, activating around the compound. Proceed with extreme caution." Delta raised an eyebrow. 5 minutes is a long time in tactical situations, Lieutenant, especially when you're surrounded and immobilized. He made another hand signal, and several of the children produced what appeared to be weighted nets. "Last chance," he said. "Surrender now, and I guarantee your safety and ethical treatment according to interspecies protocols. Resist, and..." He shrugged. "We get to test our non-lethal capture techniques on actual Escher subjects instead of training dummies." Ven made a quick decision. "Stand down," she ordered Drax, who reluctantly lowered his weapon. She then placed her own immobilizer on the ground. "We surrender under protest, and with the expectation of immediate diplomatic communication with Imperial authorities." Delta nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Wise choice. Protocol dictates that..." His words were cut short by a deafening roar from above, as the Aegis extraction shuttle burst through the cloud cover, its engines at full burn. Simultaneously, a series of small explosions erupted at the perimeter of the clearing, concussion charges deployed from the shuttle to create confusion. In the momentary chaos, Ven acted instinctively. She dove for her weapon, rolled to her feet, and fired a wide-angle immobilization pulse that caught several of the nearest children in its field. They froze in place, temporarily paralyzed but unharmed. "Drax, get Yelena! Extraction point, now!" she shouted over the din. Drax scooped up the injured Yelena and charged toward the extraction point where the shuttle was descending rapidly, its defensive systems active and scanning for threats. Ven turned to follow, but found her path blocked by Delta, who had somehow avoided the immobilization pulse. He held no weapon, but his stance was that of someone trained in hand-to-hand combat. "Impressive response time," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "But unnecessary. We had no intention of harming you." "Stand aside," Ven ordered, her immobilizer trained on him. Delta didn't move. "You're making a mistake, Lieutenant. This isn't what you think it is." For a moment, their gazes locked, professional to professional, regardless of species or age. Ven saw something in the boy's eyes that gave her pause, not fear or aggression, but a kind of resigned understanding. The moment was broken by another series of explosions, not concussion charges this time, but actual weapons fire. The shuttle's defensive systems had engaged, responding to some unseen threat. "Lieutenant, we're taking fire from concealed positions." The shuttle pilot's voice came through her comm. "Multiple tracking systems locked on. We need immediate extraction, or we'll be forced to withdraw." Ven made her decision. She lowered her weapon slightly, not surrendering, but no longer directly threatening the boy. "This isn't over. Delta, your training facility has been logged and will be reported to Imperial Command." Delta's expression remained neutral. "Of course it will. That was always the plan." Before Ven could process this cryptic response, a blinding flash erupted from the shuttle's position, followed by a shockwave that knocked her off her feet. When her vision cleared, she saw the shuttle hovering just above the tree line, deploying a series of decoy drones that shot off in multiple directions, drawing fire from hidden defensive positions. Seizing the opportunity, Ven sprinted for the extraction point, her mind racing to make sense of Delta's final words. As she reached the shuttle's extended ramp, she glanced back to see the boy standing calmly amidst the chaos, watching her retreat with an expression that seemed almost satisfied. The shuttle's ramp closed behind her as soon as she was aboard, and the craft rocketed upward, its defensive countermeasures working overtime to confuse the tracking systems below. Inside, she found Drax attending to Yelena's injured leg, while a security team prepared for possible boarding action. "Kieran," she asked immediately. "No sign," Drax replied grimly. "The captain made the call to extract with available personnel only. The risk of losing the shuttle was too high." Ven felt the familiar weight of command responsibility settle on her shoulders. They had left a team member behind. The shuttle pilot turned from his controls. "Lieutenant, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's being broadcast on our secure frequency." "Put it through," Ven ordered, steeling herself for demands or threats. Instead, a familiar voice filled the cabin, Kieran's. "Aegis extraction shuttle. This is Operative Kieran. I am unharmed and have been released by my captors, with a message for Imperial Command." He sounded bewildered but calm. Message follows. The Terran Frontier Initiative acknowledges the Ishar Imperium's interest in Sector Q-17 and welcomes future diplomatic contact through established channels. This training facility will be relocated within 24 hours, as scheduled. No further action is required. Message ends. The shuttle fell silent as the implications sank in. "They're letting him go?" Drax asked incredulously. "No," Ven replied slowly. understanding dawning. They're sending a message. They wanted us to find them. They wanted us to report back. The shuttle docked with the Aegis 17 minutes later. Kieran was retrieved by a secondary extraction team, reporting that he had indeed been released unharmed, with all his equipment intact. The children had simply escorted him to a clearing, provided the message, and disappeared back into the forest. In the Aegis Command Center, Captain Rowe reviewed the mission recordings with growing concern. "These are not ordinary human children," he stated, freezing the image on Delta's face. "The discipline, the tactics, the equipment. This is a military operation disguised as a youth training program." Ven nodded. "They knew we were coming, Captain. They detected our arrival and prepared accordingly. But they made no attempt to destroy us, or even permanently capture us. They wanted us to see them." "A demonstration," Rowe mused. "But of what? And for what purpose?" Yelena, her leg now treated and in a recovery brace, spoke up from her seat. "I completed the signal decryption before I was captured. There were references to other facilities, similar training programs on at least 7 other moons in adjacent sectors. This wasn't an isolated outpost, it's a network. The implications hung heavy in the air. The humans were establishing a presence in disputed space, training their young in military tactics while maintaining the plausible deniability of an educational program. It was brilliant, disturbing, and entirely legal under the existing accords. Set course for Imperial headquarters," Captain Rowe ordered finally. "Command needs to see this immediately. Lieutenant Ven, prepare a full report. Include your tactical assessment of the training program's effectiveness." Ven hesitated. "Sir, requesting permission to include a personal observation." Rowe nodded, his crest flattening in curiosity. "These children, these human youths, demonstrated tactical awareness and unit cohesion superior to many adult warriors I've encountered. They neutralized an elite Eshar reconnaissance team using primarily non-lethal means and primitive technology. If this is indeed a widespread program..." She paused, searching for the right words. "We may need to reassess our understanding of human military doctrine." Captain Rowe considered this for a long moment. "Noted, Lieutenant. Include your full assessment." As the Aegis prepared to jump to hyperspace, Ven reviewed the mission recordings one final time. She froze the image on Delta's face during their final confrontation. There was something in his expression that continued to haunt her, not the triumph of victory or the nervousness of youth, but the calm confidence of someone playing a role in a much larger strategy. "What are you planning?" she murmured to the frozen image. "What game are you really playing?" The answer came 3 weeks later, after their report had been submitted to Imperial Command. A classified briefing was distributed to all frontier commanders, establishing new protocols for encountering what was now designated Operation Juvenile Irregular Militia. The directive emphasized non-confrontational observation and immediate reporting of any similar facilities. What troubled Ven most, however, was the final paragraph of the briefing, a signal intelligence update that had been received just hours before distribution. "Be advised, long-range sensors have detected communication patterns consistent with the Q-17 training facility at multiple locations throughout sectors R-12, S-29, and T-34. These communications ceased immediately upon detection, suggesting awareness of Imperial surveillance capabilities. All commanders are instructed to maintain heightened alert status when operating in or near these sectors." The humans were expanding their presence in disputed space, using children as their vanguard, and they wanted the Eshar to know it. Lieutenant Mara Ven stood before the view screen in her quarters, staring at the star map with its newly marked potential human activity, indicators scattered throughout formerly empty sectors. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had witnessed not just a training exercise, but the first move in a game whose rules and objectives remained obscure. The boy's words echoed in her memory. That was always the plan. Whatever the humans were planning, one thing was clear. They were no longer playing by the expected rules. And the Eshar Imperium would need to adapt quickly if they hoped to understand the new game taking shape in the darkness between the stars. The next time Ven encountered a human commando training facility, she doubted very much that the children would allow themselves to be detected at all.